All right, guys. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Kelly, like I said, people will probably be popping in here and there throughout. Um, and then I'll also keep an eye on the chat. But first, I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I know some of you probably are still, those who went to the festival still might be getting your energy back up from a long weekend. So thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight we have Kelly Cornett with A Cork in the Road. And hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Um, I'm really excited about this because Kelly has such a vibrant personality and such a great enthusiasm and love for wine, that she's always a good time. So um, I'm going to do things a little differently. Normally, I start off with a bio, but this time I'm going to just ask Kelly to kind of introduce herself and then tell us just a little bit about where you're from, quick kind of background on who Kelly is, and then we'll kind of segment into the chat portion of the program.
Thank you so much. Who Kelly is. That's the I'll try not to get too deep right away. Who am I? I don't know. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. And it's truly an honor that you reached out and I love the Hugh Society. And I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. So there's just so much good energy with the chapter here, and it's truly an honor to be joining you all. So thank you so much. My background, so originally I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Do you have a Minneapolis chapter? I just realized that I don't even know that. Is there a Minnesota chapter?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, we'll say yet. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm from Minneapolis, but so I grew up there and then I ended up going to grad school in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. And I say that like I went to school for exercise science, so I was doing very much like sport and exercise physiology and all health and wellness types things, but I was living in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, and this was the right around 2009, 2010. And honestly, the best part about living in Virginia at that time was learning about the Virginia wine industry. So I was going to school, but on the weekends, I'd go to the vineyards that were half an hour
Right.
away from campus. So I really started just exploring the wine world then, but I grew up around wine. My dad had always traveled for wine and taken me on his trips to Napa and Sonoma when I was like a baby in a backpack. But I think Virginia is where I realized, wow, I really enjoy learning about wine in an academic way. So
Hmm.
I started after I graduated with my master's. I couldn't get a job in 2011 in my actual job. So I started working at the winery part time that was right by campus in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And they were like, "Oh, well, do you know about wine?" I'm like, "Well, this is what I know other than what I went to school for." So they started getting me involved with harvest and blending sessions and working with the winemaker. And about a year in, I became the manager.
Oh,
So they were like, she likes wine, let's get her involved. Yeah, so I worked for 3.5 years as the manager of a place called Cross Keys Vineyards. And I know that you all were just in Virginia for the fest. So I don't know if Cross Keys was poured, but it was a really big deal to be part of the Virginia wine industry back then, seeing everything growing. And then now I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I have my own business where I do events and media, mostly media now. And I have a podcast about wine in the Southeast. And that's kind of my way of bringing people into the wine world, just the way I was having a fun time exploring wine. My goal is to always help people find wine in their own way. I don't ever want to be doing events where I'm telling people what to drink or how to drink. It's more about giving the tools and resources to explore and have fun exploring wine because that's what I still continue to do. So it's all about,
right.
yeah, exploring for your own vocabulary, for your own exploration. Yeah.
Right. We talk a lot lately. I would say probably in the last 2 years, we've really talked a lot about how, just the Virginia wine scene has had this surgence, and it's becoming really popular. And not only just a popular terroir, but just some really, really good wines. Talk about what are some of the things that characteristics that you think set Virginia apart with their wine from other areas in the country? And if someone hasn't ever tried uh, Virginia wine before, some things that will probably maybe interest them about those characteristics.
Oh, I'm smiling so big. When people mention Virginia wine, I'm like, how long do we have? Because I will talk forever about it. Truly, it really was a very special place. I'll say kind of from what sets it apart as an industry right now. And this is something that was happening. So not to date myself, but yeah, like 14 years ago when I was working at the winery, it was true back then and it's even stronger now. It's smaller production. So therefore, if you work or visit a Virginia winery, you
Mhm.
really get a kind of behind the scenes, hands-on approach that I feel like if you worked in some other maybe more advanced industry at the time or region, you wouldn't have the same opportunity to be involved in the same way. So when I was working there, I was the manager, but I was doing harvest. I got to help with sorting on the sorting table. I was giving tours of the facility. I was driving around the state selling our wine. I was legit involved in every single aspect of the wine industry. And I've heard that that's kind of still the case. So Virginia offers people a kind of a look behind the curtain in a
Mhm.
different way that if you go to some region that has more years under its belt, you wouldn't see a small production, but also maybe access to all of those different pieces of making wine. So now, if you want to do an internship or if you want to do some sort of visit, it's really an opportunity for us in the United States to see kind of all aspects of winemaking. And I saw this from working there, but I still think that's happening for visit. So they want you to come visit. They want you to walk in the vineyards. They want you to see the cellar. They want you to be part of it, of all the steps. So that makes it extremely, extremely special. And then from the grape side of things, and the wines, every time I go back to Virginia, you guys, it is exponentially better than the last time I was there. The
Mhm.
knowledge that is flowing into that state from international professionals right now is unmatched. When I was working there, my winemaker was from South Africa,
Mhm.
and his whole family were grape growers, and they came to Virginia, and he really settled there in terms of using his knowledge from South Africa. But that's happening from Italy. You're getting a ton of like maybe third, fourth generation from very well pronounced places in Italy are now finding jobs in Virginia that they couldn't maybe get from their families even in Italy. They're coming here with that knowledge. So yeah,
Mhm.
I see a lot of Italian grape varieties that are doing really well in Virginia. I also see a lot of American hybrid grapes. So yeah, we were working with gosh, one of my favorites was Vidal Blanc. That was really good. We had our kind of star grape was Petit Verdot, a French variety. Cabernet Franc, Viognier, Petit Manseng. That's probably my most like everyone pay attention to Petit Manseng in Virginia. But you're seeing some pretty creative approaches to dealing with the humidity and the kind of swings in cold and warm temperature. The humidity is a big thing in Virginia that people are learning how to deal with.
Yeah.
That's a long-winded way of saying I'm excited about the knowledge that's coming into the state and the
Yeah.
access. Yeah.
When you describe those, diurnal temperatures and a lot of the other aspects of the Virginia area, it reminds me a lot of Paso.
Oh
And
yeah.
and even when you described it, just how, you can go and just meet the winemaker and people are very inviting. When you were describing it, it reminded me a lot of my time there and just kind of how I felt in the same way.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, they want you to come and experience what's happening there. When
Very
you go to those
inviting.
places, they're
Yeah,
not like, oh, this is like XYZ. They're like, no, this is what's happening in this region. Here's what we do here. And I
right,
think it's really a great opportunity for people that like learning about wine to be like, no, it's not trying to be like some other place in France or in other places in
right,
California. This is what we do here, and here's
right.
why. And I That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah. You touched on a little bit about, starting to work at the winery 14, 15 years ago. I know
That makes me feel so old, but yes.
from speaking with a lot of people who work in the beverage industry, particularly in the marketing aspect, the younger demographic is a big, big target right now. What do you feel has changed? Do you feel that that's changed from your time when you started working there 15 years ago? Do you see that there's a bigger uh, young, that 18, not 18, but 21 to 35 demographic that's now kind of being enthusiastic about wine and being interested about wine?
Absolutely, yes. And I say this maybe not even from my time in Virginia, but and I also feel like a lot of people are reporting the opposite of that, saying that that demographic is not drinking wine. And maybe they're not drinking what my parents drank. Maybe they're not drinking those same brands or the same style of wine. But I had so many people who would come into the winery. This is 2011, 2012. It was their first ever winery trip. So they're in their maybe early, late 20s. They'd never been to a winery before. And they're coming to the winery in Virginia because their friends have a trip or it was a bachelorette party or something. And people were excited every single day. I got to welcome people to possibly their first ever wine tasting. So that to me was really neat to see, especially in a place that maybe even people that live in Virginia haven't traveled to California or Washington or Oregon or whatever it is to airfare travel, but they have wineries in their backyard. So I saw, even like junior, senior college kids of the colleges in the area would come to the winery. We did a big graduation ceremony for all the students in the area and their families, and it was part of the experience for that crowd.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've always believed that wine, what I've seen is even if people don't have any background experience in wine, but if we give people the opportunity to learn about wine, they
Mhm.
kind of want to learn about wine. Like if you give them the opportunity and the like open door to it, people seem excited about wine. That's just my experience.
I agree. There's times where I've done tastings at, community festivals or local events, and people who may have never even really tried wine before, as long as you make it inviting, they seem to be interested. And
Oh,
I
yes.
feel like people really want to know more. I think that they're just never put in positions to where they're made comfortable asking questions. And, because sometimes it can feel a little closed off. Um, but people really are interested and want to learn about wine. It just seems intimidating in some instances.
Oh, yeah. I had people coming to the tasting room, this beautiful, I get it. You come through like a gated entryway and there's the Blue Ridge Mountains in the background and this like Italian villa. Like it was very extravagant looking. I would have people come and they'd like lean over the counter and they'd be like, I'm nervous to be here. And I'm like, all right, let me give you some alcohol. Like, let's just, let's start there. But it gave me as someone who, like, I just thought wine was super cool and I grew up around it, whatever. But it was eye-opening to me to be at a public tasting room and so many people told me they were nervous to say the wrong thing to me, didn't know how to describe the wines to me. And I'm like, that's really not like you don't need to do that. Like I'm here to serve you. Like I'm giving you alcohol right now. Like we're here to have fun and but it made me realize of kind of a bigger picture of if people don't have the tools and resources to feel empowered to learn about wine, then it might not be as fun. And
Right.
that is truly the what I learned from that time in Virginia that took me to Atlanta and was like, I need to help people just have access to learning about wine. I am not the most knowledgeable person about wine. I do not claim to be, I haven't taken all the exams, I haven't done all that, but I definitely saw a need for access to the information.
Right.
So that's kind of like it's beautiful when you see people light up and have fun when they thought that they maybe couldn't even be there in the first place. I saw this happen at the winery all the time. All the time.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that, to just kind of shift gears a little bit, one of the things that we know can be important is, like you said, just the exploration and the access. So kind of tell us a little bit about your time in Argentina and how having that exploration and opening up to another culture kind of helped you with your palate.
You just made me smile. You just brought up Argentina. I'm like, whoa. Do I talk about it all the time? Absolutely. Yeah, I love that you asked that because that was really formative to me. So that was prior to my time working at the winery, but it all really made me realize like wine is something I knew more about or felt connected to because during my undergrad, so I went to Michigan State. I don't know if we have any other Spartans in the room. I don't know. Go green. Anybody? But yeah, I went to Michigan State and they have an incredible travel abroad program. And that was one of the main reasons that I even went to Michigan State. In 2007, I did a semester abroad studying international relations. Like it had nothing to do with wine, but I was living with a family. At the time, I was fluent in Spanish. I had been studying that all through college and high school. So I was living with a family in an apartment in downtown Buenos Aires. And I went there for school, but in the meantime, realized that wine was at every meal. My host mother was serving me wine, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like, wine was part of what you ate. And it wasn't about like getting drunk and crazy, but it was like, this is part of the seasoning, this is the sauce, is like, this goes with the meal. And so I was like, 21, 22, seeing this and like, this is really cool. This isn't how it is back in the United States at the time. And I realized that every single person there had a story about how their family, what they were drinking at home, how they were using it for cooking, pairing, all of that. So it was a really big cultural awakening for me in terms of wine as part of, yeah, culinary conversations at the dinner
Yeah.
table. This was like, it was what people gathered around. And even at the students at the college, like we would go out for happy hour after we would have class and we'd talk about the wines and the grapes. And it was all Argentine wine because very little wines in Argentina are not Argentine. So this was all new to me too. So the conversations and the like, wow, this is not just to get drunk. Like it wasn't, that's not what ever was. It was part of the meals. That
Right.
was a big thing as like a little bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 20-year-old to learn about, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, experiencing that kind of gives you a real time appreciation of it being just another layered cultural aspect of wherever you are. Just like they say, whatever grows there goes with the wine that you're drinking, wherever the grapes are grown as well. And I've often been just very curious as to how come the cultural aspect of wine never really took off in the United States because we have such a blended mixture of all of these cultures, but it just never really took off as part of what we do when we eat or when we gather and things like
Yeah.
that. It's almost like this small subset of people who just happen to like wine, but it's not a part of what we do here in America. That's always been very interesting to me.
So interesting. And it was truly woven into everything. Not necessarily that we talked about it, but certainly
Right.
wine was at every meal when I was studying there. And then I I think what I loved about it too is that it wasn't like this specialty item. Because of that, it just was like this is what we do and somebody's family who makes that wine and that's what was at the table and that's literally how it was. So beautiful connection and I think it's I want to say I hope it's happening here more, especially if you live in a place where there are wineries or there is a wine industry nearby. So maybe if you go to Oregon, Washington, Virginia, New York, like where you can access the wineries where that's being grown, maybe we're seeing more of that. If you can go and connect with the people in the place that it's being made, maybe that's a big piece of it because people in Argentina certainly connected with the people behind the wine, and that was part of the whole deal too. So maybe it's like making sure that we get to explore those places where the wine comes from and the people. Maybe that's the right direction. I don't know. I'm just brainstorming here because you're right. It hasn't been as prominent, but yeah,
Right.
it was pretty beautiful to see.
Oh, and by the way, Shay said that she was born and raised in Lansing, Michigan.
Okay, are we go green? Are we go green, Shay, or are we at the other?
No, always go
Okay.
green. Always.
Okay. It's okay. My mom went to the other school, so I have to deal with
Oh,
that. But that's awesome. There's a lot of good Michigan wine too. Speaking of like access, I was in northern Michigan, like Traverse City, Old Mission Peninsula earlier this summer, and I get so excited about what's happening in Michigan for wine as well. So
That, well, that's actually a great segue because one of my next questions was going to be, what are some of your other, look, I guess maybe Virginia's not so little known anymore, but what other areas in the US can you consider maybe little known areas or pockets that are making great wine?
Ooh, so I feel like there's so many. I keep learning about this all the time. So maybe, yeah, maybe not as little known, but I would say like I get excited about Michigan because also there's this academic approach. They partner with the extension offices. There's like a whole kind of academic approach to what grows well in cooler climates. And they're
Mhm.
studying a bunch of that up in Traverse City. And so trying varieties that do well in Minnesota, Michigan that are totally different, but then how can you express the best possible version of those grapes? So that's like the Marquette grape. That's one that's really up and coming there. Um, Gosh, it's really neat to me to see that. And the white varieties do really well there too. Like obviously the Rieslings are really good, but that to me is impressive when it's that academic studying approach. I really like that. I also recently on a trip to California, because I like to go out to Sonoma County quite a bit as much as I can. I drove up for the first time to Anderson Valley, which is like an hour north of kind of the main hub,
Mhm.
closer to the coast in Sonoma County. I was so excited about Anderson Valley. I feel like people are like, okay, welcome to the party. Like, I'm sure people know about that, but I had never been. And now that I've been there, that place, if I see Anderson Valley, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, whatever on a list, I'm probably going to order it because I did not have a wine that disappointed me there. So, yeah, Michigan, Virginia, and Anderson Valley. If I can add those to the plate.
Oh, that's great. We'll have to look out for those. So
Yeah.
tell us now about, you leave Virginia and you head to Atlanta. What's next once you arrive to Atlanta?
Yeah. So I was working full disclosure, came to Atlanta for not wine. For my more of my degree, I was studying exercise science, and I started working in public health at the Georgia Department of Public Health, and I was doing exercise science programs for elementary school kids all over the state of Georgia. I was getting the kids moving. That's what I came here to do. And during that time though, I was working, like 8:30 to 5, and I was learning about Atlanta and honestly just wanted to meet people and realize that I missed the wine industry quite a bit. Obviously, if you guys are in Hugh Society, like you love wine in the community, like that's what it is. To me, it's people. Like when I enjoy wine, it's the friendships and the people that I meet through it. So I just started doing that as a way to connect with Atlanta. And at the time, there were some, independent shops, there were really great restaurant wine lists. But I just approached some of my then friends. I said, well, if you need anybody to do events or marketing or host an educational, special event, like I'm here, I can do that. So 2013, 2014, I was partnering with places like Vinoteca in Atlanta, some restaurants in Pont City Market. They just were like, hey, you can come do this because we don't really have like the capacity to plan all the events. But if you want to do that, let's bring people in to drink wine. So I
Mm.
started doing that. That was like, yeah, 2013, 2014, doing events all over Atlanta, pop-ups,
Yeah.
hosting education events. It was so fun. It was so fun.
And the wine, the close-knit wine community here has grown so much in
Yeah.
just a short period of time.
I met so many cool people doing that. I think again, it's like it's you're drinking good wines, but the connection that it was like I could go to these restaurants and I knew someone. I like, oh, like, hey, I'm back. And that community aspect that's like, oh, what are you drinking now? What should I take home? Wine shop friend that I now have that sells wine. Like it was just like they started
Right.
to bring me into yeah, the fun community aspect. So it makes a place feel like home. It was around then too. At the time I was living in the apartments by, if you know anything about Atlanta locations, like Three Parks Wine Shop had literally just opened in the same apartment complex that I was living in, and they were
Mhm.
doing free wine tastings on Wednesday night. So my husband and I would just bring our dog down. I know, free tastings, who does that anymore? But we'd go down and meet our neighbors, meet, people that were living there. So it was a really beautiful thing, even more than 10 years ago in Atlanta, to see the community building around wine. It was awesome. It was so
Yeah.
awesome.
So tell us now, because a cork in the road is what you're known for right now. So I would love to hear the story of one, where that name came from, and then two, just the vision behind bringing this to fruition.
That's so funny. I feel a little like nerdy about the name, but yeah, it's silly. I mean, it's obviously playing words with a fork in the road, but I I was like, well, I'm kind of living two different worlds, and I still am. I still like some of my colleagues in both worlds find it wild that I do both, but I still work full time in public health, and I
Mhm.
own my own wine media consulting business. So I live literally two. At the end of the day, I pick like which Kelly am I going to be? So it was a play on words of like I have a fork in the road. Am I going to do exercise science Kelly or am I going to do wine Kelly? And that's that's really where that came from. But I also think that there's a play on words there of wine can pull you in places that you never expect. So you might be doing something, you might be full time doing something, but you're also studying wine concurrently, or it's parallel to what you're learning about. And wine can come in and out of your life. And I love asking people what they did before they got into wine or what they were doing while they got into wine, because usually it's like two parallel streams in terms of interests. So
Yeah.
that's where the name comes from. And then I
And a
just
lot of
put
us
it
are
back in there.
still doing both,
Oh
you
my
know.
gosh,
Yeah.
right? Like you live two worlds too. Or maybe wine isn't, maybe it's not a separate world. It's almost like it's woven in to the relationships that you have, or you've learned something about wine that's historical or cultural, and it actually benefits maybe your full-time job or a conversation you have at work. So yeah, it's almost like it fuels the other things that you do. So that was the name of the business. And this was really because I was doing things for free. And my friends were like, Kelly, you need to form an LLC. You need to stop doing this all for free. You need to start a business. And I'm like, okay. So I looked for a name. The URL was available. The Instagram handle was available. And I'm like, done. That's it. That's
Now,
it.
was this during the time of COVID?
No, it was actually kind of before, like 2016, 2015 is when I started the LLC. And then really honestly, the podcast portion of thinking about how to communicate about wine, that was definitely
Okay,
driven by
that's what I was
COVID.
thinking, that
Yeah,
maybe the podcast was COVID related.
100%. Yep. Yep.
I love how intentional you are about focusing on particularly people in wine in the Southeast region. I thought that was really clever because the Southeast region is not necessarily a region that people would probably name off of the top of their head when talking about wine. Um, was that something that was important to you to highlight specifically? And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was actually the biggest motivation was what's out there, what are the conversations happening, and why are we not part of it? So I honestly during COVID, I'd been doing all these events and I really got excited about the wine community that I saw here, the talent of wine directors, sommeliers, retail shops. It was so exciting.
Mhm.
And I was looking around when kind of COVID happened, everybody was home, and all the stories and all the people that were the voices were like California and New York. And I was like, but we're doing cool stuff too. And so I was like, well, that's awesome. But I think that we all still want to talk about wine. And I wouldn't be able to go to the community things that were happening in terms of like in-person events here in Atlanta. So I started working originally with someone who was doing a local radio program. And he was like, do you want to be the wine correspondent? And I was like, that sounds great. They were based in Decatur, Georgia. So this was like, I could do everything remote. I started interviewing people and doing little, what's hot in Atlanta restaurants? What can you get, what wines should you be drinking with XYZ that was happening? This is like early COVID. And then I realized that all these things are recorded. Why wouldn't I just put them up? Like I could take what I was doing and put them on a podcast platform and more people could hear it. So
Right.
that's what originally I started doing in 2020. I took all of those recorded kind of interviews and I just popped them onto a podcast platform very early
Right.
on. That's what I was doing. I was like, why not?
Right.
I didn't know anything about it. I actually didn't even listen to podcasts. My husband was the podcast person, and I had no idea. I didn't even know that that was like what people listen to in their cars or any, like, I had no idea. I wasn't
Yeah.
listening to
And you've
podcasts.
had how many episodes so far?
So as of today, I just recorded episode 133.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome.
thanks.
Congratulations. So where we a lot of times I like to bring up in these A to Z chats um, just how the guests their perspective on how the industry has changed since COVID. What are you seeing are some of the biggest changes since COVID and how the industry has really reacted and evolved from that time period?
There's so much. I think wine communication became, I think, more important than ever. And this is my experience having been in person at a service role in the winery in, early to like 2013. And then realizing that when you take those service components away, and maybe people couldn't go and gather and do what a lot of people really enjoy about wine, it was the wine communication, the connection that it brings that people were missing. And now I even see people valuing wine media, wine PR, wine marketing, like all of that, I think is more important than ever. I've seen that happen. So it's like what voices are being heard, how is it getting to people? How is that being communicated out? What are the topics of conversation about wine? It's not just the taste of wine. It's not just, what is this wine? It's who's drinking it and how are they drinking it and where do we go from here from a climate perspective? Are we being responsible when it comes to our growing practices? Like these are the conversations that wine media can have that not just wine selling could have.
Right.
So I see the wine communication industry having boomed since COVID. That's what I would say. It's
I
like the
definitely,
media surrounding it.
yeah, I definitely would agree. I think to a certain degree, the wine media space maybe have been primarily more just advertising in print prior to
Yep.
COVID.
Yep.
If there's anyone on the call now or who may listen later interested in getting into the visual wine media space, what pieces of advice would you have for them entering that space?
I think that there is always space. I had someone, I'll pass on an advice that someone told me in the podcast world, because there are definitely days where you feel like, do I have something to offer to this? Like, do I know enough? Do I know enough to have a conversation about wine? Do I have know enough to write an article about wine? Someone told me a long time ago that the best part about the wine media space is that there's truly no limit to who can put stuff out, because people are consuming it. Like, you're not just going to be someone that listens to one podcast. If you listen to podcasts, you probably listen to lots of podcasts. And
Mm-hmm.
when you listen to the episode, you want something else. You want something else. You want something else. So it's kind of a open book on putting content out that comes from video as well, that social media. Like, people are always wanting to consume new perspectives, new ideas, new ways of looking at things. And so it shouldn't be intimidating. That should be encouraging in that space, that your experience, your resume of what you bring to wine will resonate with some people. So even if you think that, oh, well, I don't know as much as someone who's talking about wine pairings, that they have all these amazing things, it's like, but they don't have your perspective, and they don't have your lived experience, and they don't have where you've traveled to or what you've tasted. So I think that's what the wine media space offers, is it's people's individual perspectives and, yeah, resumes that they're bringing to the conversation. The conversation is ongoing and never ending. And
Yeah.
that's intimidating in some aspects, but it's kind of exciting in others. There's
I
always
would
new
think that,
ways to look at it.
yeah, I would think that getting into the wine media space um, would be more inviting than maybe some other subject matters, because wine itself is so subjective. So that kind of leaves the road open to say, okay, we welcome different perspectives because wine itself is a subjective item.
Right. And it's people's experiences that they're bringing into that space that are exciting and interesting. And
Yeah.
that's what I love. It's like, yeah, you can have this, maybe even the same title as somebody, like in terms of role that you have in the wine industry, but they grew up in a different place. They ate different things. Their parents had different influence on their wine than the other person did. And like, there's always a new aspect to discuss. And I welcome opinions and insights whenever I'm talking about wine, because I'm like, I actually kind of want you to disagree with me. Like, tell me something that I haven't heard. Like, I like when people are like, no, that wasn't my favorite because of XYZ. I'm like, let's talk about that. That's fun. I want opinions all the time.
Wanda in our chat said that she loves the sipping style wine and fashion pairings. What a great idea. So tell us a little bit
Oh,
about that.
oh, Wanda, thank you. That's so cool. Yeah, that has been such an adventure. So I'm like, long story short, I got invited by a friend of mine she's a leather purse designer. She lives in Atlanta. Right before COVID, I got this random message on my website. Hi, I'm looking for someone to talk about wine at an event I'm doing, a fashion show. And I was like, that sounds great. Find out later, she legit Googled wine education Atlanta into Google, and I came up. And that's how that happened. And she needed somebody to talk about wine. They were doing a runway show, and they wanted someone to talk about wines to pair with the looks that were coming down the runway. So this was like clothes, jewelry, her purses, all of that. So I did that for her in, I think it was 2018. And she was building this whole sip and style event. So it was one of my favorite things, super cool to see people enjoying wine, watching the show. Very subjective of why I paired the wines with the looks. There was no rhyme or reason. I just was like, wow, that makes me feel Cabernet Franc. I don't know. I just was pairing things with what I felt the wines kind of felt. And then we worked together to design a handbag that carries a bottle of wine. So this was like a partnership in the making. We had such a good time working together. And then because of Donna's sip and style format, we have continued it, and it kind of grows every time we do it. That now there's food, so now there's always a dish, there's always a look of whatever the local designers that we're featuring, and then the wine pairings. And we've been doing them now. Gosh, we're coming up on we have a fall one coming up. So it's like, I think our sixth one or something like that we've done together. It's so much fun. It's literally just supposed to be fun. There's,
Yeah.
you just walk around, you just walk out feeling good. You might learn something, but you're supposed to feel really good by coming. That's the whole point.
Nice. So what, before we open up for to see if anyone has any specific questions, what are some of your favorite food wine pairings?
Oh, that's always like a really sentimental question. I feel like people will smile every time they think about food pairings. Gosh, my husband and I have very different approaches to this. My husband thinks that there really isn't supposed to be rules and you're just supposed to open something you want and eat what you want. And that is definitely a way to do it. But you all know, like there's times where you're like, that was magical. Like there are some pairings are better than others. So I have a place in my heart for anything champagne related. We actually just threw a party at our house that was champagne and fried chicken. Everybody brought champagne, and my husband cooked fried chicken, and that was the party. Like that
Mhm.
was the whole reason for the party was
Yeah.
to drink champagne and eat fried chicken. But I also today just interviewed that podcast episode that I just actually recorded today with the winemaker from Ridge Vineyards in California and Sonoma. And I've been drinking Zinfandel with like barbecue or pork and that kind of thing. But she suggested, and I haven't tried it yet, but the way she talked about it was pretty magical. She suggested Ridge Zinfandel with an avocado with olive oil on it. Just like a really simple, she said it's literally magic. And I think it's a textural thing that happens. So I'm looking forward to having my avocado with my
Very
cinnamon
interesting.
dough. That
Did she
seems so
offer
crazy.
any additional kind of descriptions to what she felt? That's
No,
interesting.
she said it was like it almost, what did she say? It turns it into like a buttery texture, more than avocado already is. And then she just said it with like the flavors were so, I think she was saying it was like so different than what you might expect. So maybe
Yeah.
intriguing. I don't know. I can't speak to it from my own experience yet, but that was pretty cool. But yeah, I would say sparkling wine is my cheat code. If I don't know what to do, I'm gonna open some bubbles, and that's what I'm gonna have with what I'm eating.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna have.
I think that's a go-to for a lot of people. Yeah, sparkling. Can't go wrong with sparkling or champagne.
Mm-mm. No.
Are there any wine regions in the world that you have not been to that you'd love to explore?
Oh, I've been thinking so much about this. So much about this. Yes. Well, one that I did finally accomplish going to, I always wanted to go to Spain. And
Mhm.
I went there last fall, and now I honestly can't stop talking about Spanish wine. Like my friends know if they invite me to a party, like I'm probably bringing something from Spain. So I was like,
Mhm.
oh, she's got Spain again. Yeah, I'm probably gonna pour something from Spain. I loved it so much, but I think for me, I really would love to go to Loire Valley of France. I've been to some other regions in France, but I think I've heard it's kind of that similar aspect of what I was mentioning about Virginia of like, maybe a little bit smaller production. Things are a little bit more, come on in, spend a couple hours with us. And I'm really intrigued by Chenin and Cabernet Franc. So I feel like I gotta go there to really get my French study
Yeah.
of those two great varieties. I mean, I worked with Cabernet Franc in Virginia so
Yeah.
much. So I feel like I gotta go to the motherland of that.
Yeah. Right, right. Well, does anyone have any questions for Kelly? Anything involving just the Virginia or Atlanta wine scene or any media podcast questions? You can either ask or drop in the chat. And like I said,
I
Kelly.
have,
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Shay.
I was just going to ask, um, in regards to the future and with your podcast and the things that you're doing, is there anything that you're really excited um in bringing to fruition and growing your business from now and from where it's been to the future?
Oh, thank you. I love thinking about the future in a positive way. Thank you so much. I try to. I have, it's kind of already started, but I think there's a lot more in this space to be done. I have been starting to do in-person live audience recordings when people are visiting Atlanta. I have done a few of them, but there's there's so much opportunity there because then it's almost like offering people that are wanting to explore wine or work in wine, they get invited to things all the time to just taste and learn about the wine. But I can offer a whole different type of experience to folks that on their itinerary when they visit Atlanta, they'll meet people in a whole different setting. They still get to share their wines. We're still tasting the wines, but it's recorded, it's meeting people in a whole different way. It's sharing their story in a different way. So I have a couple of those coming up where it's like 10 to 12 people in the audience while I'm recording the podcast, but it's also like a tasting. And that is so fun because I think if people that are there have fun and the guest has a lot of fun too. So I'm excited to do more of those. I also have a conversation I can't wait to have. I feel like, do I say this up? Yeah, let's hold me accountable. I'm gonna do this. Let's have it out there. I want in the fall to do a what I'm kind of posing as a supplier roundtable discussion about the challenges of being a supplier in the industry right now because oftentimes they get stuck with the costs of samples and marketing and all of that, it all kind of falls on the supplier. And so I wanted to have a conversation about how to improve, who's got ideas for innovations in this space, how can we help everybody win in a different way. So supplier roundtable, you heard it here first. I don't know. Oh my God, that's coming up. I gotta get that happening. Let's have those let's have tough conversations. Like let's like actually break that down.
And that's a great idea because sometimes people don't realize. I mean, we all know the retail space and we know that we go into a wine bar or a store, but a lot of people don't really know what goes on behind the curtain from that aspect.
Yeah.
So that's
Or like if you go to a wine dinner
yeah.
and you have the wines and you pay, let's say you pay a ticket to go to the wine dinner. Um, Where's that money? Who gets the money? Where is that wine coming from? Did the wine get paid for in the cost of the ticket, or did the supplier have to provide a sample? Like these are all like you don't always know how that all works. And I feel like and like they have did who paid for their travel? If they came for Atlanta, who's pay is it the winery that's paying for like all of that? So I just think that there's a lot of ways we can help people in the distribution system that don't always have the best benefits of things. And so I want to have this open roundtable discussion to put it out there. May not have all the solutions, but like
Right.
I'm ready to have some tough conversations on the podcast. I'm ready. Like let's go. Like let's be a little controversial. I'm ready.
No, that's a great idea that, starting the conversations is always the first step.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question on the lighter side, just for fun, because you said it was just for fun. So I just have I have four things. This is a fashion show, and you tell me the one that pops to mind.
My gosh. Okay.
A,
All right.
a
All right.
crisp,
All right.
okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
A crisp white tailored women's suit. What are you drinking?
Ooh, Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc, like a Sancerre. Like I'm feeling
Okay.
like a Sancerre. Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Okay. LBD, the little black dress.
Oh, I did this the other day. I'm gonna go Portugal, like a Douro, like a table wine. So like just like a really interesting layered, not super expensive, like I'm cheaper than you might expect. Like I taste more expensive than I actually am type of red wine. That's what I'd go.
Okay. Jeans and a white t-shirt.
Ooh, rosé. Yeah, rosé. Totally. like like logo Provence, like classic Provence. Yeah.
Okay, last one, a red mini dress.
That one's fun. Ooh, that one is kind of okay. Red mini dress. We're going like a Beaujolais crew, like a really beautiful gamay, but like up a notch.
Okay.
That was cool, Wanda. Thank you. That was fun.
Wanda, that was awesome. I can't stop smiling. That was really good. Now you can feel free to disagree with my pairings. That is the best
Oh,
part
it
about
sounds good
fashion.
to me. All of them sound good.
Yeah.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I'm gonna put on something and I'm gonna walk around. I'm gonna drink. I'm gonna get a wine from this list because I wrote it down, and I'm like, let me see if I feel like this wine. I'm
That's working. That's so cute. I just sent today that we're working on our fashion, our fall fashion sip and style is coming up early October here in Atlanta. And I just finalized the themes today with my design partner, Donna. So I'm already in like the fall mindset. Like I'm ready for fall and I'm ready for fall outfits. I'm ready for fall like wines and food. Yeah, I'm ready. I'm in that mindset. Like you just tested me, but like I'm there.
okay, great.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Well, Kelly, thank you so much. I always love you just so enthusiastic and so joyful about wine. Always a pleasure. And thank you. Just this was really fun. And sometimes, we try to mix it up a little bit and have different subject matter topics for our members. And thank you for just sharing your story. We appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. I'm like, whoa, this was really cool because I guess I do have a question for you. Like, I'm wondering what has the Hughes Society brought to your own wine journey? I just like I know it's a big question for the end here, but like, can someone tell me like what it means to be how has the Hughes Society helped you enjoy wine? I'm just curious from anybody who wants to share.
Anybody want to go first?
I think you've already said it when you talked about your experience when you were in school away. Hughes Society has brought a sense of community to me. So I think that's the biggest thing is a sense of community. Just finding like people and opening my palette up to things that I say, oh, and then people within that community say, Wanda, try this, just try it. And just the education because I'm learning as I enhance my palate. What can I like to, food and wine. So what can I eat or taste the first time if I think it's a wine that I don't like? So like now I
Mm.
know if it's a wine that has a lot of tannins, let me get something salty, if I need to smooth it out until my palate gets used to it. You talked about bubbles. There was a champagne and fried chicken um, thing that I went to that was brought to me. The idea was brought to me through what is the champagne they did a bubbles and champagne, a chicken and champagne thing, and I was like, oh, let me do that at home, But because
Yes.
society, I said I'll do it at home since I didn't make it there. Earlier this year, the Hughes Society did like French fries, different type of French fries. We did, with our drinks, and
That's
so that was
awesome.
really good. So it's like just broadening my sense of exploration when it comes to wine. So
Love that. I love that. That's awesome.
In the chat, we have community exploring different wines with people who we can relate to in all areas. And then we have another comment, people uh, to drink wine with that look like you. And I think that that's one of the things that we talked about earlier is whenever you're in a space where you feel comfortable, you feel inviting, you feel like kind of the walls have come down and it's not so intimidating. Um, in a space such as that, that's when it becomes fun and you're able to learn and explore without judgment. And I think that that's one of the things that a lot of our members really value with the Hue Society. Of course, you know, we network and we do education and things like that. But it's a space that if you're just here just for the community aspect and just to learn, there's a space for that too.
So awesome. That's so awesome because I told you there were so many people that came to that winery. I was just like so surprised how many people felt like they didn't belong at a winery. No, it's yeah. So I love that. I love that aspect.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. That was we don't get a chance to answer questions from our guests, so thank you for that.
My podcasting can't stop. I'm so sorry. I have so many questions. I love that.
Oh, this is great. Anything else? Anybody have anything else to add before we wrap up? Hey, Kyle.
He's in a good spot. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. Cal always has the best backgrounds. Well, thank you, everyone. I'll say good night and I will see everyone next time. Don't forget, we also have another program. We have our How Wine Works Part 2 series coming up next Tuesday on the 30th. And you will be receiving another email about that pretty soon as well. So thank you guys and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.